Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Berkeley, California today, joined by Yin Lee from Evanston, Illinois. We had, I think, the best weekend of dual meet racing in NCAA history this past weekend, which is what we're going to talk about today. Yin, would you concur with that assessment?
I don't think I've been following NCAA swimming closely enough to conclude that because really I've only paid attention to dual meet weekends for like maybe the last 4 or 5 years. But definitely out of all the dual meet weekends that I've followed, definitely for sure.
Fair enough. I can say with a lot of confidence that before the past 4 or 5 years, dual meets were just slower and slower. They've really gotten faster in the last 4 or 5 years, which we'll get into a little, I think, as our conversation goes. But holy, holy moly, was this weekend fast? I think that starts where I am on the West Coast. We saw Arizona State travel to the Bay Area where they raced Stanford on Friday and then Cal on Saturday. There were so many sensational swims. But Yin, I'll start with you. Just what were your highlight swims? What surprised you? What was a really good swim but maybe didn't surprise you? Yeah, what were your initial thoughts and reactions to that pair of dual meets with Arizona State?
Well, obviously Ilya Karun was the major standout, going 137 in the 200 fly, one of the fastest performers of all time. We knew that he was capable of a finaling in this event. We've known that since the very first dual meet, but this is just taking it up a notch, and it's turning him from an A finalist to potentially one of the best swimmers in the NCAA period. And now, as a freshman, he's the favorite to win the 200 fly now at NCAAs, and I think that's a really big deal. I'm also really impressed with Zalan Sarkani, who has been very fast these past few meets. He went 8:37 in the 1,000 free, also one of the fastest performances of all time, backing up that 14:29 from a few weeks ago. So ridiculous. I think Cal stepped up more than they did last year. I think they're starting to take dual meets more seriously. Last year, it was a matter of ASU suited up and Cal didn't, so ASU did considerably better. This time, I feel like not that they didn't respect ASU last year, but I think this time they looked at this meet and their mindset was, we know what you guys are capable of doing, but we can do it too. And we know you're good. We want to be able to match that. So ASU really helped set the standard with suiting up, and Cal followed suit. And definitely the tie. I really hated the fact that ASU and Cal tied, but yeah, the fact the tie showed that the battle between the two of them, the two schools, is closer than it was predicted to be. And the Stanford men also looked really good. Andrei Minikov was back, Ron Polanski, Jirfan, and they did really, really well, especially Minikov, 132, 200 free, um, 138, 200 fly, which is ridiculous. I didn't know he had that in him. And then 44, 100 fly. He's back like he never
With
left, so very, very good. So those are all my highlights. Also, fast swims on the women's side, Lindsay Looney, 132, 200 fly, but I think most of the highlights were of the men.
Yeah, that 44-100 fly from Minikov. I don't know if he watched the video, but all of his turns were awful. Like he was taking half strokes into every single turn, and he still went 44-1, which I think is just ridiculous. He looked so good in all of his races, and yeah, like you said, back like he never left. So the tying of ASU and Cal was so fun to witness and to be there to watch. So we're just going to mix in some sink or swims today on this breakdown instead of doing a whole section of them. So first, sink or swim. Do you think ties should be allowed in NCAA college dual meets?
I'm gonna sink it. I know it don't matter. Dual meets don't matter in the long run, but it's not fun. I like the idea of a sudden death overtime where there's extra on the line, and especially since it's a meet between the top two teams in the country. Even if it's not for a record or anything that counts towards the postseason, there's still a lot on the line, and there's a lot of just pride on the line, and it would have been so much more entertaining to see some sort of tiebreaker than to just call it a tie and leave it at that.
There were a lot of ideas being thrown out on deck in real time about like, what do we do? There were fans shouting, reswim the relay or like skins. I think Herbie Bame of ASU had thought about this scenario, and he was like, I think that the head coaches should put on a suit after the second break if they think there's a potential of tying. And then if they tie, the head coaches get on the blocks and do a 25 all out, and winner takes all,
Yeah,
which I think is pretty hilarious. I'm swimming ties though. I think it it means that on that day they were completely evenly matched. I don't really have a problem with walking away from a dual meet. I think it would be super fun to see them settle it in a sudden death relay or sprints or skins or whatever it is. But like to see the top two teams go at it, swim a ton of fast times, the fastest dual meet in history, I think it's safe to say, and then have them come out neck and neck. Uh, I think if this were NC2As, it would be pretty anticlimactic, and I wouldn't want NC2As to end in a tie. But I think for a dual meet, this fuels both teams, and it fuels the narrative of ASU versus Cal moving forward. And for that reason, I kind of like it.
yeah, and Sophie Kaufman, she did an article about ties in
Mhm.
swimming. It was a really well written article, and she mentioned that in 2014 in women's gymnastics, there was a tie, and that they need to implement something to make sure that doesn't happen in swimming because a joint national champion is just not. No.
Yeah, I agree. I think there should be some rule written where if you tie it NC2As, something needs to happen, right? Uh, there was at one duel in the pool, I think it was 2013. It was in Glasgow, and it was the European All Stars versus Team USA, and they tied at the end of the meet. And so there was a mixed 200 medley relay, as that was like written in the rules as like that's the tiebreaker. I'm guessing because no one ever thought it would actually happen, but they actually did it, and Team USA won. I don't really remember who was on it aside from Simone Manuel anchoring it, but it was pretty epic. But yeah, it's like something like that.
Yeah, and a mixed 200 medley relay would be really fun to watch.
It would be. This is why NC2As should be combined, because then you could do that as a tiebreaker. But yeah, it was at both meets it was raining, which I think just added to the drama of it. At the Stanford ASU duel, it was just kind of like lightly sprinkling, but at the Cal duel, for certain parts of it, it was like coming down pretty heavy. Uh, and especially like during the 50 freeze, I was afraid that someone was going to like fall off slip on a block at the start or something, but it didn't happen. And people were going 18s in the 50 free rain. Hubert Koch and Destin Lasco went 139s in the 200 back while getting pelted by rain. So I think that was pretty pretty dramatic and pretty cool to witness and to see how fast they could go in conditions like that. And I think it bodes very well for both teams coming into NC2As.
Oh, for sure.
Next sink or swim. After seeing this dual meet where the Cal men and ASU men tied, who wins NC2As?
Um,
All right, here, I'll phrase it this way. Sink or swim, ASU is still the favorite to win NC2As.
I'm gonna swim it. I know it was a tie, but when you factor in all of the other teams that will have scorers, the gap between ASU and Cal will widen because I feel like ASU still has a lot more potential A finalists than Cal does, especially with Zerkani and Ilya Karoun's getting better, whereas Cal is losing people. They lost Aaron Shackle and yeah, the whole Brooks Curry thing ended up not. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I don't know what's going on there, but assuming that doesn't happen, I think ASU still outnumbers Cal in top end talent.
Agreed. I think I think their depth and potential A finalists on paper is better than Cal's. And I think that right now I would also swim ASU being the favorite. I don't necessarily think that means they're gonna win, but because Cal has such a heavy focus on NC2As that even though we've seen them suit up and swim really fast in a dual meet, even though we'll see them, suit up and swim probably very fast at Pac-12s. I don't, they've done this time and time again. I don't think we will see them really show all their cards until NC2As. And they have the advantage of, I talked about this with a lot, and you could see it at the dual meet this weekend. Cal rolls up to NC2As, and no matter where it is, it's like a home meet for them because they have 100+ cheering fans in the stands in bear suits, like screaming the whole meet. And it gives them a lot of energy and momentum. And nearly no other team has that to the level that they do. And I think especially for Arizona State, they know what they're dealing with because they dealt with it last year. But they have to be ready to perform under those conditions, right? And I think we saw them do a very good job of it at the meet this weekend when there were hundreds of cheering fans in the stands for Cal. But having that kind of energy for Cal makes a big difference, and not having it at a championship meet like that can make a difference in the other direction for Arizona State.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up fan influence, and I love that this is a topic of conversation because I feel like at dual meets you don't really hear about that often because people don't watch dual meets, but the energy at the Cal meet gave them a legitimate home field pull advantage, and you also saw that at the UVA NC State meet where I think Ross Fan had to like silence a bunch of booing people in the UVA stands, like that kind of stuff. You don't typically see that at dual meets, but you saw that this weekend. I just thought that was really cool.
Agreed. And it just makes it such a spectator friendly environment and experience, right? To see that kind of fan athlete interaction. Let's move on to the UVA NC State UNC Triple Dual that was at Virginia. That again, where you saw Ross Stant silencing the crowd when he took the 1,000 free win. We saw Noah Nichols kind of chirp back when he took the win in the 100 breast. But it's good to see that dual meets are getting a little more exciting in that way, that people are deciding to suit up to get faster swims out of themselves at any point in the season. But I think we're headed in a good direction is how I'll end that little rant. UVA, NC State, UNC Triple Dual at UVA. Obviously, the highlight was Gretchen Walsh.
It's always Gretchen Walsh. Anytime Gretchen Walsh touches a short course yard, the attention is all on her, especially this year.
I talked to her in Knoxville right before she went and did something ridiculous at Virginia Tech, I think. And I was a little hesitant because in her interview, she was like, yeah, I've been pushing 4,800 backs in practice, and I pushed a 46 in the 100 free. And I didn't want to make that the headline because there's no video of it, right? She's just saying it, but she backs it up with everything she does in meets, right? I mean, she went 48 in the 100 back in this meet. She went 46 in the 100 free, and so it's like she's on another level this year, right? She is Leon Marchand, Caleb Dressel, Natalie Coughlin. Like she's ascended to the top of the NCAA, and sink or swim, she will break 3 NC2A records individually at NC2As.
Oh, I'm 1,000% swimming it. First off, if she chooses to swim the 100 fly, she's technically already hasn't broken the NCAA record for that, but she did. There was that whole thing at the midseason meet,
Tennessee.
and
Yeah.
she's just been knocking on the door of those NCAA records just over and over again with her dual meet swims. And it's just ridiculous. And a lot of people say, oh, she doesn't get a lot faster. Her specialty is swimming in practice suits. But she does. She did get significantly faster in both of her NCAA meets. I don't see why she can't this year.
Yeah, it's not that she doesn't get faster with a suit, it's that she's already so fast without a suit.
Yeah.
And then she gets like a bit faster. She gets like partially faster.
A bit faster. She dropped a second in the 100 back last year. That is not a bit faster.
You're right. She gets a lot. Yeah. It's like that's a misconception completely. Just to give some context, if you don't know, at the NC State UNC Triple Dual, Gretchen Walsh split 20.1 in a 50 freestyle, the fastest split in history by a big margin. She was 21.5 in the 50 fly. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then she went 46 in the 100 free. She was 48 in the 100 back. She was 20.9 in the 50 free, all which are times that most athletes never go in their entire career. And she was doing this in a practice suit at a dual meet.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, she's she's putting up times that are just bananas for in season, and it's all signs are pointing to her having a historic NCAA performance. So it's not quite a sink or swim, but who do you think will have the better NC2As, Leon Marchand or Gretchen Walsh?
I've got to go with Gretchen. I think this is her year. She's been the center of attention. She's been the spotlight throughout the season, and I think she was kind of overshadowed by Kate Douglas these last 2 years, and rightly so, because Kate Douglas is incredible. But this year is her time to shine. And we were just talking last week about how Leon Marchand might not set that many NCAA records, whereas Gretchen Walsh has never had that massive three win NCAA meet, and I think she's gonna have that this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in definitely two different places. Gretchen had a sensational NC2As last year, but was just off in the 50, just off the NC2A record in the 50 free. Let me rephrase that, and didn't win it. And then just off the NC2A record in the 100 free, did win it, and then smashed the record in the 100 back with a win. But so she didn't have that lights out 3 for 3, completely breaking every record performance, whereas Leon did. 6 of his 7 swims were the fastest in history, right? And so Leon's in a different place, obviously, this year because A, he's already had that meet, and B, his focus is the Olympics, right? He wants to help his team win an NC2A title, and he wants to perform well at his home Olympics. I don't think breaking NC2A records is his number one priority, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't necessarily need to just fully rest, go all in for this meet. He could add time and still run away with 3 NC2A titles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying he will. After seeing him go 138 in the 200 IM twice in 24 hours, it's kind of like, oh my God, like, can he go fast? Like, is he going to go faster? Like, I'm feeling insecure about saying he's not now. because that's just incredible. But I think Gretchen has more to prove at an NCAA championships. I think
Oh, of
she
course.
is very motivated to have that 2018 Dressel-esque, 2023 Marchand-esque meet where she just completely dominates and rewrites the record book. So I'm with you. I think Gretchen is going to have that meet. That's our SwimSwam breakdown for today. We just wanted to recap again the fastest dual meet weekend in history, where we saw just some crazy fast times from east to west coast. Thanks for joining us. I know it was a short one, but we'll be back next week with a normal size one. Until then, we'll see you next time.